Welcome back into the Pick and Roll NBA podcast with Jet and Sap, presented by Full Press Coverage. 3 games down in the NBA Finals, and the Celtics are the team on top right now with a 2-1 lead after winning last night 116-100 in the first NBA Finals game in Boston in 12 years' time, Sap. And the crowd was really ready for that Finals game. It was raucous from the get-go. I think that they really helped the team when they were sort of flailing in the third quarter as they're wont to do. It's not like the Celtics played a great third quarter, but it was certainly not the complete disaster that it was in games 1 and 2. But ultimately, it was the Celtics pulling away in the fourth quarter with a 23-11 frame that put them ahead for good and took a 2-1 lead, as I said. So, Sap, what were your impressions of Game 3?
Well, what a strange series, right? I mean, you look at the third quarter, the Warriors have outscored the Celtics 106-63 in those 3 third quarters, games 1, 2, and 3. Meanwhile, in the fourth quarter, in games 1 and 3, the Celtics have outscored Golden State 63-27. So Golden State puts together these massive third quarters, and then in game 1 and game 3, the Celtics were able to withstand that with just lockdown defense in the fourth quarter. And that's been really where the series has been, because in the first 2 games, the first halves were pretty even. Last night, the Celtics had a lead at half and looked to be in control, but then Golden State kept coming to the point where they actually took a 2-point lead fairly late in the third quarter. But the Celtics were the stronger team down the stretch. And it just appears to me that in this series, and it happened last night, that Golden State goes for it in the third quarter. They get their haymakers out. Steph Curry's on fire. And then when we get to the fourth quarter, they don't have much left. The Celtics are the younger team, the more athletic team, the bigger, the stronger team. And I think you've seen that in the fourth quarter. In games 1 and 3, Jet, and again, throwing a lot of numbers here, a la Hubie Brown, but Steph Curry is wilted in the fourth quarter of games 1 and game 3. He's played nearly 19 minutes in those 2 games in the fourth quarter. He's shooting 3 of 10 from the floor, 0 of 3 from 3. He has 3 turnovers and 6 points, and he's at minus 30 on plus minus. I'm not a huge plus minus guy because, you could be playing well and your 4 teammates might not be playing well and you're getting beat up by the opposition. But that's pretty alarming. It seems like Golden State's good for 3 quarters and get to the fourth quarter. They just don't have enough left. Klay Thompson, who had a pretty nice game last night, ineffective in the fourth quarter. Steph Curry, who was his usual sensational stuff for the first 3 quarters, not effective in the fourth quarter. Between those 2 great players, 2 points. As you said, the Celtics outscored them 26-11, and now they're in complete control of this series. So it just appears to me through 3 games, they are certainly younger. I mean, that's fact, not opinion. More athletic, bigger, stronger, and when they really impose their will on Golden State, they're going to be tough to beat.
Yeah, we talked about this after game 1 and why we talked about, the Warriors sort of being a front running team and stuff. It's not necessarily an attitude thing, though it is to an extent, but it also has to do with the style of play. And again, talked about it after game 1. By the time the fourth quarter runs around, 3 quarters of running around screens and stuff like that. And if the Celtics are making you work defensively, you're going to be gassed. You can't explode off of screens as fast as you did in the first, second, and third quarter. It's not humanly possible to have more energy in the fourth after you've been running around for, 25, 26, 27 minutes for the first 3 quarters. You're going to be naturally, anybody's going to be somewhat gassed. And so I think you're seeing that in the fourth quarter with Klay Thompson and Steph Curry run off of more screens than anybody in the league. I would venture to guess, and probably cover more ground in terms of like total miles run over the course of a season than anybody. So I think you see that fatigue come into play. And when your legs are a little bit heavier and your arms are a little bit heavier in the fourth quarter, it's a little bit harder to get that to shoot the ball. And also it gives the defense a little bit more time to be able to block your shot or impact it in a different way and maybe make you force a pass. So I think that's continues to be the key for the Celtics is keep it close, keep it manageable. And then in the fourth quarter, you give them your best shot and you try to come over the top, work for them in game 1, work for them in game 3. So what happened, in game 2 was it just got completely out of control by the time the fourth quarter rolled around, and it didn't matter how tired the Warriors were. You weren't coming back from that type of deficit. So, that obviously is key for the Celtics. And the thing we talked about coming into this game, Sap, and everybody was talking about was turnovers, and the Celtics didn't do an amazing job last night with turnovers, but they did significantly better than what they had been. 12 turnovers last night, 16 for the Warriors. So a big improvement for the Celtics there. And for me, Sap, the biggest thing overall in this game was the rebounding battle. Celtics win the rebounding battle 47-31. That's a hugely significant number. And I felt like it was a concerted effort on the part of the Celtics to crash the glass hard. And guys like Grant Williams, guys like Rob Williams, Al Horford, they were doing a really good job aggressively rebounding the basketball. The Celtics, for the first time this series, did a great job imposing their will on that side of things, on the rebounding side of things. That really should be an advantage to them because they're a bigger team and, as you said, a stronger team.
They're bigger at every position, right? From Marcus Smart being bigger than Steph Curry, not necessarily taller, but probably 30 or 40 pounds heavier. He's just a much bigger person. Way stronger. I mean, in fact, Marcus Smart, looks like he put a few pounds on during the postseason, which is nearly impossible, but he's stronger. At this point in their career, Jaylen Brown is by far a better athlete than Klay Thompson. We saw on one block that Jaylen Brown had, it kind of looked at that point like the kid finally surpassed dad, that the kid was ready to dominate dad, in the driveway. And that's what happened on that block of Klay Thompson. Tatum's stronger at this point, more athletic than Andrew Wiggins, although Wiggins is a great athlete. It's just a bigger, stronger team without question. Hell, Jaylen Brown had 9 rebounds last night from the 2-guard position. And I think that was an important thing. And it kind of led to another key statistic that the Celtics dominated, 52-26 points in the paint. That is a huge advantage. That's somewhere where they should be able to control the game without question. But you pointed out turnovers. That is the X factor throughout the entire postseason, Jet. They had 12 turnovers last night, as you detailed. When they have fewer than 14 turnovers in this postseason, they're 14-2. When they have more than 14 turnovers or 14 or more turnovers, they're 0-5. So if they take care of the basketball, they're nearly impossible to beat. And also, when they can get a third scorer scoring in the 20s, and that was the case last night with Marcus Smart, they're unbeatable because Brown and Tatum are going to do what they did. They combined for 53 points last night, but then Marcus Smart gives you 24 and you're on your way.
Yeah, we talked about how pedestrian the role players were for the Celtics, if that's actually a compliment in game 2. And that Horford, Rob, and Marcus Smart combined for 6 points total. Each of them had 2 in game 2. And you obviously had much more production out of all 3 of those guys last night, in addition to Grant Williams having a nice game off the bench too. Smart, I thought that you needed a big game out of him last night, and he responded well, and he took 17 shots, but I thought that they were good shots, and a lot of them were him in the paint or driving to the basket. And those are the shots that you like out of Marcus Smart, because like you said, Sap, he's physically much stronger than Steph Curry. I have no problem with Marcus Smart being in the post in this series because he has a huge strength advantage over Steph Curry. So those are much more high percentage shots. Rob Williams' fingerprints were all over this game last night. I thought he was tremendous, even though he looks like he's maybe 40%. He's limping up and down the court, but 40% of Rob Williams can still block 4 shots and get 10 rebounds. And he played really hard last night. And so he was awesome last night. Now Horford, 11 points, but he also had 6 assists and 8 rebounds and a block. So he was filling up the stat sheet. And the Celtics don't need, Rob or Al Horford to go out and score 20 every night. But if they can get, like you said, another guy besides Brown and Tatum to score 20, they're really, really hard to beat. And the role players at home, as sometimes they often do, Sep, showed up more than they did on the road. So credit to them for showing up. And it all amounted to a Celtics win in a game that was really important for them to respond to what happened in game 2, which was their worst loss in months, and show that, that wasn't what they're really about. And this is more closely to what they are, Sap. And I think, as far as the turnovers go, it's not asking that much to not turn the ball over 14 or less times in the game. So it's not something that you're like asking this team that is not doable. They can do it. It's about just treating every possession with care. Because we said, Sap, after game 2, a lot of those turnovers, most of them, in fact, were just careless passes or not handling the ball well. So if Golden State makes a great defensive play, hats off to them. But they're not making 14, 15, 16 amazing defensive plays that are resulting in turnovers. Most of those were the Celtics just doing unforced, dumb stuff.
Yeah, last night Marcus Smart got a little careless with the basketball, especially in the second quarter when I thought they could have really extended the lead, kind of held them back a little bit. And as far as Marcus Smart, who I thought played a really outstanding game outside of those turnovers, I mean, he was scoring, he was defending, facilitating as best he can, and coming up with big plays, as you said, in the low post. Golden State does not have a rim protector, right? I mean, we talk about Kevin Durant, and I bring him up all the time because with Kevin Durant, Golden State was unbeatable. Without him, they're an outstanding team. They did win a title in 2015, but they're very beatable. Kevin Durant not only was a cheat code on the offensive end, he was also perhaps their best rim protector at 6'11", 7 feet. He's not a great defender, but he's a willing defender, and that's something he gave them. They no longer have that. So Marcus Smart's working in the low post. Who the hell's going to really impact his shot? Is it going to be Kevon Looney, who's really not that guy? Draymond Green was busy doing other things last night, like playing poorly. So they weren't going to get in the way of Marcus Smart in that situation, or Tatum or Brown taking it to the basket. And Tatum missed a lot of bunnies last night. He could have walked off with over 30 points last night, and the win could have been even more one-sided. So continue to do that. You have that size advantage, and just take advantage of that. I think that at some point in game 4, and we saw him at the very, very end of the game, I think Golden State's going to have to put Jonathan Kuminga, who I like a lot, who's a rookie. He's going to give them athleticism. They lack athleticism. I mean, this is an old team that's not very athletic. As great as Steph Curry and Klay Thompson are and have been, they're now a little bit older, obviously. They were never considered great athletes out there. They were highly skilled basketball players. Draymond's not a great athlete. Wiggins is their best athlete. I think they should play Kuminga a little bit more going forward in game 4. And we know Steve Kerr's willing to do those types of things because he did that in the 2015 finals when he brought Andre Iguodala off the bench to start in the lineup and check LeBron James. And he ended up winning the MVP of that series as he held LeBron to 37, 13, and 10, which is, still a pretty good series by LeBron, even though somehow the narrative was that Iguodala shut him down, which he clearly didn't. But, that's another discussion for another day. Shut him right down. But Kuminga is a guy I think you got to see more of if you're Golden State. I know he's a rookie. I know he's going to make some mistakes out there, but he's going to give you athletic ability, something that you need if you're Golden State.
Yeah, those are my thoughts exactly, Sep, is that's what that's going to be their big adjustment in game 4, is that you're going to see more of Kuminga. So you got to look at, okay, here's, whose minutes is he going to eat into? Is he going to eat into a little bit of Draymond's minutes? I could see that. Otto Porter Jr. played 21 minutes last night. Perhaps he eats into some of his, though I thought Otto Porter has been doing a nice job for them, especially from 3. Poole was really good in game 2, but he hasn't been much of a factor in game 1 or game 3. He played 24 minutes last night. Maybe Kuminga eats into some of his. So overall, there's the availability for Kuminga to play, 10, 12 solid minutes. And so that gives them something that they haven't had. And the Celtics, if they see him on the court, they're obviously going to try to expose him for being a rookie. So, the Celtics will have their own counter moves too, but I do think that that's obviously something the Warriors have lacked and certainly need, and it could give them a different look than what they've had. So I think that's a great point, Sap. I think that you're likely to see him. I don't think he's going to be playing 20 minutes, but I think he's going to have a role in the next game. Talking about Draymond Green, though, because, it's certainly worth discussing. After game 1 and 2, he had a lot of things to say. He does his podcasts. And game 2, I think he was, the X factor for Golden State. They played his type of game. They followed his lead, and the Warriors won that game with him being an irritant. He was awful in this last game. I mean, he described it himself after the game. He had no qualms about saying that. 2 points, 3 assists, 4 rebounds, fouled out, 2 turnovers in 35 minutes, 1 of 4 from the floor, 0 of 2 from 3. Sap, did the crowd get to him? Did the Celtics try to expose him because they were trying to prove a point? What was going on with Draymond?
I think right from the get-go, Jet, that Jaylen Brown hunted him. And look, Jaylen Brown right now after 3 games, and I don't want to jinx him or the Celtics, who lead this series 2-1, but if voting took place right now, Jaylen Brown would be the MVP of this series. He was the biggest reason he won game 1. You were down 15 late in the third quarter, 12 to start the fourth quarter in game one, and he scored your first 8 points and got you off to a great start in that big comeback. Last night, he scored 17 points in the first quarter, got you off to a great start because it's a tense situation. You lost game two in blowout fashion. Now you're back home. You've lost 4 out of your last 7 at home in the postseason for whatever reason. And Jaylen Brown kind of righted the ship right away in the first quarter. He was so important, and he went after Draymond Green. I just think it got Draymond Green off of his comfort zone. And I think maybe Draymond Green was looking for the Celtics players to get into it with him, and they decided not to, which I think a bully sometimes, or an irritant, likes to get engaged with his opposition. And when the Celtics weren't having any of it, they just played better than Draymond Green. I don't think the crowd had anything to do with that. I think he's very comfortable with that. Not a big deal. I think Klay Thompson and Steve Kerr seem to have more of an issue with it than Draymond Green. He was fine with it. But I think that they went after him early, and when Jaylen Brown got off to that great start, I think it just had Draymond Green on his heels for the rest of the game.
Yeah, I agree with you about the crowd, Sap. And I want to talk about that in a second because, Steve Kerr and Klay Thompson were all pissy about it after the game. But I think that, Draymond Green still, in my mind, is one of the best defenders in the NBA, but he's not the Draymond Green, as you've mentioned before, Sap, of a couple of years ago, right? So I think that gives Jaylen Brown confidence to say, okay, one-on-one, I can attack this guy, and as good as a defender as he may be, I'm a better offensive player. And we've seen this happen, time and time again throughout the history of the NBA, is that I don't care how great of a defensive player you are, great offense is going to beat great defense every time. That's just the nature of the sport. So, I think that Brown, was wise to do that. And I don't know that it was his decision, Ime Udoka, the team, whatever, but it obviously worked. And the Celtics have really relied on Jaylen Brown to get them going early and then Tatum to sort of carry them late. It seems like a fine methodology for me. But we talked about this, Sap, with Brown, I think during this final series, is that I like that he's been much more willing to play within himself and not just force threes, but take the mid-range shot, drive to the basket. He's so much better at finishing at the basket than he used to be, where it was like a nightmare every single time. He still misses layups occasionally, though. It was Tatum who was missing more layups last night. But Brown seems to be playing with a lot of confidence, Sap, in this series. I agree with you right now that if the finals ended, he'd be the MVP. He's been the Celtics' best player. That's not to say that if the Celtics do win, that Tatum can't win it, because I don't think he's all that far behind. But Brown has been tremendous. And as far as Draymond goes, I was on the Warriors subreddit after the game because I like to hear, what their fans are thinking. And this seems to be a common theme with them. I think for fans of the Warriors, they seem to be fed up with the Draymond Green experience. I almost look at it like how some fans were fed up with the Marcus Smart experience, midway through this season. And that, you love the intangibles and you love what he's brought to them and stuff like that. But, sometimes those things are to the detriment of the team. And last night it certainly was. And Draymond was a negative for them. He finished, you talked about plus minus at the beginning. He was a minus 13. He was, you could make a case he was the worst player in the court last night, Sap. And so, if those antics aren't working and you're not producing, it's frustrating for fans. I'm sure it's frustrating for his teammates, and it's frustrating for him. You saw his press conference after the game. He's a smart guy. He knows basketball really, really well. He was well aware that he didn't play well. But for the Celtics going forward, can you count on him being terrible every game? I don't think so, but I do think that you can rely on him not having an offensive impact in any of these games because he just doesn't have any offense anymore.
No, he's a really good passer. We saw him make a few nice passes last night. That was about the only thing he contributed. He's not going to score. He's not a scorer. I know he's a guy that in Game 7 of the 2016 finals, I think scored 35 or 36 points. He was the best player for the Warriors in that loss to Cleveland in 2016. I don't think he has that in him anymore. He's a guy who's going to give you 7, 8, maybe 9 points, but he'll also give you 7, 8, 9 rebounds, assists, play defense, set screens. Really, he kind of runs the offense. They can run things through him because he's such a smart player, as you detailed. He's also a player that's 32, 33 years old with a lot of mileage on him, as is Klay Thompson, as is Steph Curry. These guys have gone to 6 finals in 8 years. As you
Olympics.
say, they play a style. Olympics. Yeah, exactly. I mean, these guys have played a lot of basketball over this period of time. And it just looks to me now that the Celtics, as I said at the beginning, are the more athletic team, younger, bigger, and stronger. And they're just imposing their will on them. And it's going to be difficult for Golden State to get back in this. Now, Game 4 is Friday night. And if Golden State finds a way to win, now it's 2-2, best of 3 with Golden State having home court advantage. And that's all the Golden State Warriors need to come here to Boston is win 1 of 2. And we know what Draymond Green can do. If he starts getting into an opposing player's head, then, he can kind of derail that player's game. The key for the Celtics is getting off to that early start like they did in Game 3. Brown had 17 in the quarter. You built up a double-digit lead, and you kind of built that all the way through until, again, having trouble in the third quarter when somehow Golden State in his game jet in the second quarter scored 8 points in 37 seconds, right? Remember that stretch. And then they had a 7-point play in the third quarter. So they had 15 points in 2 very, very short periods. One in the second quarter, one in the third, and they still lost by 16. So the Celtics really dominated that game, except for those 2 little stretches in there, which, I've never seen a 7-point possession. It's just,
they're probably the only team that can do it.
Absolutely. And they're probably the only team that could score 8 points in 37 seconds. I mean, it was just like, whoa, what happened? The Celtics were in control.
I was surprised, with about 2 minutes and change left, Kerr, emptied the bench. And, I thought that, listen, it was a large lead for the Celtics at that point, but leads should mean nothing to that Warriors team. So I was a little surprised, though Curry was a little dinged up. So maybe it makes sense from that standpoint. But yeah, you can't. That's why the Celtics get in trouble when they start thinking, oh, well, we have a nice little double-digit point lead here. We can coast a little bit. Well, double-digit lead is erased in, like you said, 30 seconds for the Warriors. That means absolutely nothing to them. So you have to be cognizant of that too. And Sab, the Celtics have two wins now in this final series, but they haven't played I'd say, a great game yet where they've been like, wow, this team really just they played 4 great quarters here. Like they were good in the first quarter. They were excellent in the fourth. The second was a toss up and the third was bad. So it's like, and the game 1, it was basically the Celtics did well, was played to about a draw in the first half and then had a dominant fourth quarter. But I'd like to see a 4-quarter effort out of them.
Well, now you're looking for perfection. I mean, now you're looking for the 2017, 2018 Warriors who just regularly did that every game in the postseason. And the Celtics
I don't need
really
it every
good.
game. I just want it one game.
Well, hopefully they can do it 2 more times and then you'll be hanging banner number 18. So, I mean, that's perfection. And again, I've said this a million times, really the last 2 years, I don't see a dominant team out there. I mean, Milwaukee beat Phoenix in the finals last year. The Celtics, Golden State are meeting in the finals this year. None of those 4 teams are dominant teams. They have their flaws. That's where the NBA is now, whether you think that's a good thing or a bad thing. Some think it's a good thing because now it's much more competitive. Other people like having a dynasty in there that you kind of target and try to dethrone. But, the Celtics do have their flaws. They're not going to just go out there and play a perfect game. They still turn the ball over a bit too much. Occasionally on offense, they go with the too much ISO ball and gets them out of sorts. In terms of rebounding, sometimes they kind of lose their edge, although, as you pointed out earlier, 47-31 edge last night, which they should have over this team.
Absolutely.
Golden State's not a really good rebounding team. I mean, Looney and Draymond Green are your 2 best rebounders, and it feels like Golden State, when those 2 guys are on the floor playing 3 against 5, right?
And Golden State killed you, Sap, with offensive rebounds in the last 2 games. I know you won game 1, but you gave up too many offensive rebounds, and that's about effort. The Celtics did a much better job, as I alluded to earlier, with the effort on the rebounding. And Sap, I'm not necessarily looking for a perfect game from the Celtics, but there are things I'm saying that I think Coach Udoka, I'm sure, is saying this today, that they can still clean up. Like, for example, Sap, 17 of 24 from the free throw line. They could do much better than that. They missed too many free throws. It's crazy how many free throws this team misses.
Yeah, I mean, okay, so if they go 20 for 24, now you're looking at 80%. 17 of 24 is 72%. So, yeah, I get you. Look, I mean, I'm LeBron James' biggest guy here on the East Coast, and it's maddening sometimes when he has trouble at the free throw line. A guy of that caliber should not shoot 70% from the free throw line. And you look at Jaylen Brown, who can hit threes with people all over him, or mid-range shots, off the dribble where it's nothing but net. And then he goes to the free throw line, and he got lucky that there was a lane violation, or he would have clunked 2 free throws.
Yeah, it was like
Marcus
a quadruple lane violation.
Yeah, it was Draymond Green essentially, was going to start World War III in the middle of that, whether he was trying to hurt Jason Tatum on one free throw or come from the bench in another. I've told you before, the Celtic I feel most comfortable at the free throw line is Rob Williams for some strange reason. He seems like he just goes there and hits his free throws at a better rate than, Horford went 0 for 2 in one stretch at the free throw line. So, so they could clean
Grant
that
Williams,
up.
who's a 90% free throw shooter, went 1 for 2. It's like,
right.
I don't know
Rob
what the hell
Williams.
is wrong with him.
If Rob Williams is out there and there's a technical, send him to the free throw line. What the hell? Why not reward the guy? Because, what you get from him offensively is perceived to be a bonus, but we both agree that Rob Williams is a really good offensive player. Excellent screener, good passer. The lobs are unstoppable. He's got a really good feel for offense. I remember he took that little shot yesterday that was kind of an awkward-looking shot. He followed it up and just ripped the rebound away from Draymond Green and then just, put it right back in. He's sensational. And we'll see what he gives the Celtics in game 4, because there's only one day between game 3 and game 4. So you're going to have to kind of monitor how healthy he's going to be for Friday night. And also Al Horford, who's 36, how he's going to recover from that. But then also Golden State with, a bunch of old guys, and Steph Curry with some sort of foot issue that, resurfaced in a tangle last night. So, short period of time in between games 3 and 4. We'll see how both teams recover.
Yeah, as far as the foot injury goes, he's already said he's playing in game 4. I think it's much ado about nothing. Warriors fans were all hot and bothered. But as far as the play that happened there, Sap, that's a live, loose ball. I have no fault with anybody who's diving on it, whether it was a Warrior or Celtic. Al Horford didn't do anything dirty there. Just, it's the NBA Finals. If you're not diving on the court for a loose ball in a tight game, then why are you there? Right. Cam Newton got criticized for not doing the same thing in the Super Bowl. So that I have no problem with. And I think Curry ultimately, I know he's had ankle problems his whole career and foot problems, but I think he's going to be fine. And I wouldn't be too worried about that if I was a Warriors fan.
His shoulder, elbow, and wrist are fine.
Yeah, that's exactly.
Because there were shots last night that he hit that were just comical.
Oh no, he was crazy. He didn't have a good fourth quarter, but he was excellent last night. He was excellent.
He's sensational. But the first 3 quarters he's been phenomenal. The fourth quarter he has struggled, but again, we're talking about a guy who's 34, a lot of mileage, and quite frankly, doesn't have a lot of support. Klay Thompson looked closer to Klay Thompson last night.
Yeah, he had a really good game.
He had a good game. Andrew Wiggins is going to be a guy who gives you, 14, 16 points. He's a tough watch because he should be better. Draymond and Looney give you really no offense unless it's just garbage. And Porter's been okay in this series, and Poole's been up and down. So Steph Curry doesn't necessarily have all the support he had even at the beginning of this dynasty. And certainly you don't have the cheat code in Kevin Durant. That's the big difference.
Right. So, if you're a Celtics fan, you survived a really good Curry game, and I'd say a above average Klay Thompson game. So you feel good about that, because that's the Warriors. What they want is to have Thompson and Curry both, scoring plus 25, and Klay at 25 and Curry at 31. And the Celtics win by 16. So you got to feel good about that. Mm-hmm. Sap, as far as the post game stuff went, Steve Kerr and Klay Thompson were upset about the crowd, with the "F you Draymond" chants, and then Draymond Green's wife put out an Instagram post saying this was despicable. Warriors fan would never do anything like this. And meanwhile, you can point to, a million different things of Draymond Green flipping off the crowd. Last night, he swore in front of his son at the podium. The Warriors fans were throwing garbage at Charles Barkley at the end of, the Western Conference Finals. So, it's comical to me, but I'd say I know you're rooting for the Celtics, but as more of a neutral observer, Sap, did you have any issues with the Garden crowd last night?
No, that's what fans do, especially if you're going to have a 9:00 tip-off on the East Coast. The average fan there went to work yesterday, or maybe took the day off, got in town at 4 or 5 o'clock, went out to eat in the North End or wherever the hell they wanted to go out to eat, and started getting liquored up. I sound like Peyton Manning using that phrase, but by 9 o'clock, people are a little sauced. It's not like it was in the 80s. I never forget the 84 finals, which is still the greatest finals to me in NBA history, because you had Magic and Bird at their peak with, Kareem and Parrish and McHale and Worthy. It's just a cavalcade of stars. And it was the first time Magic and Bird met in the finals. And those games were just so intense. The crowds were crazy. I mean, it was the old guard with no air conditioning. It was 98 degrees there. Game 5, Kareem, one of the best conditioned athletes ever, is, sucking oxygen out of an oxygen mask. I mean, it was insane. It's a lot more mild now because they'll just throw people out. I mean, if people are really acting up, they will just get your ass out of there. In 1984, they didn't do it. I mean, people were smoking in the stands in 1984. It's a little bit different than we have right now. So, no, that's what fans do. And look, I mean, Draymond is a guy, we both like Draymond. I think he's as a player, he's outstanding, but I like him off the court. I think he's great with his podcast. I think he's going to be a superstar in media once he retires. But here's a guy who, when he was in Memphis, he got tossed out of game 1, and he's, given the 2 middle fingers to the fans there, which is an FU. So, if the fans verbalize it rather than just giving him the finger, what's the big difference? And then Klay Thompson got a little bit, clutching his pearls there with, in front of family and kids and all of that stuff. First of all, I don't know how many 5-year-olds should be there at 9:00 at night, but again, I'm not a parent,
Deuce
so
was
maybe
there.
I'm not the person. Deuce is always there. He's 4 years old. I mean, what's his sleep schedule like? But yeah, I mean, and Steve Kerr, but they were asked those questions and they answered them. And Steve Kerr I think Klay Thompson seemed really uber serious about it. Whereas Steve Kerr was, kind of, I don't think he brushed it off, but he wasn't as blameful of the crowd as Klay Thompson was. But I think it's much ado about nothing. They got intense for a while, then it stopped. And then at that point, I think the fans said, this guy sucks tonight. Yeah, he's not doing anything. So why rile him up? Just ignore him. He's not doing anything. It's not
honestly, Draymond said he didn't care at all. And he's the only one who directed it.
So I
have no problem with it.
He's fine with it.
I think I've said this before, Seth. If as long as it's not crossing the line, talking about someone's family, race, ethnicity,
exactly,
religion, that I'm fine. I don't care about if you're swearing, it's a basketball game. People have been swearing at basketball games for 75 years. So, it's like you said, it's pearl clutching. It's like, it was lame. And it's sort of the smarmy attitude people kind of don't like about the Warriors. It's like, okay.
Oh, sure. Well, I mean, are they not the perfect suburban team? Right.
Well, look at their fans now because they've moved to San Francisco.
It's so
it's like all these tech
people.
There. It's like, they're like, well, no one's swearing at the game because you've priced out all the people who give a damn about going to the games.
Nick Wright said this series is difficult for me because I have, a ton of tech billionaires in San Francisco yelling at me who are season ticket holders, or a bunch of like hard-headed construction workers in Boston coming at me. I don't know which way to, defend myself first. But you just look at, there's such a suburban team. It feels that way with Curry and Klay Thompson. I mean, these are guys who dad played in the NBA, right? I mean, they're they think they're shit's ice cream, which is fine, and they've carried themselves that way throughout.
And
this
Kerr
run.
Does as well. It starts, I think. Listen, I like Steve Kerr. You like Steve Kerr. We like that he's politically outspoken and stuff like that. But the reason that conservatives hate him is stuff like that, where it's like, okay, you think you're that much better than everybody else because that's how he talks.
Exactly. I think we do need a summit between Steve Kerr and Washington Commanders defensive coordinator Jack Del Rio. I think that would be a nice conversation.
I have one of my best friends. His wife works in the PR field for the Commanders, and I was like, "You have the worst job in America."
I know.
Sucks. It's a terrible job.
Well, I get what Del Rio was doing there, but I wouldn't call January 6th, 2021 a dust-up at the Capitol. A dust-up might be, a little fracas at a local
like
playground.
A fist fight. Yeah, a fist fight.
Yeah, a little bit of an issue. Yeah, I mean, storming the Capitol and 5 people ultimately died and a lot of
constructing
damage.
A gallows.
A scary moment. Yeah, I think that's a little more than a dust-up. But, we don't want to go too political on that. But, yeah, being in that department for the Washington Commanders, it starts from the owner down. A lot of problems in Washington with that football team.
Yeah. But all things aside, I like Draymond. I like Steve Kerr. But I like Klay Thompson too. But it's just last night I was like, can you really care about them using salty language that's not classy? Like, I'm sure every arena that Draymond Green has ever played in, there's probably been an FU Draymond chant.
Sure.
I would venture to say, going back to his Michigan State days. So maybe even his high school days.
Saginaw, Michigan. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure he played in front of tough crowds in high school. Absolutely. I played 4 years at Michigan State, where Michigan State essentially plays, basketball as football, right? With Tom
Right.
Izzo. He's a
And he
perfect Michigan State player.
Yeah. He continues to play basketball as football. Draymond Green.
Right. He and Marcus Smart put the helmets on, guys.
Yeah. So, I just thought as a Celtics fan, it was kind of like comical. It's like, okay, you guys got beat. And you're talking about the fans swearing. It's really not that big of a deal. Sap, any other sort of lingering thoughts from that game last night?
No, I thought, again, that Jason Tatum worked his way through, not necessarily shooting the ball that well. I thought he did a good job facilitating. I mean, he's just becoming a really good passer. I mean, it's not just the assist. It's the way he's reading the floor, finding his teammates, trusting his teammates, whether it be in the open floor, in the half court. His passes are perfect, leading to makeable shots because the passes are right in the shooter's pocket. And that's what a great passer does. So he's really elevating his game. It's rounding out. He's not shooting well, but at least he's fighting through it. And look, Jaylen Brown, my favorite Celtic. And in fact, I encourage everyone to go to fullpresscoverage.com. I've got a new column up on Jaylen Brown, who I kind of talk about as being like the middle child of the Celtics. If you look at Tatum, Brown, and Smart as the three sons of the Celtics, and again, I think it's a big two with high-level role players and Marcus Smart, Al Horford, and Rob Williams, and the big two being Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. But for argument's sake, we'll put Marcus Smart as part of a big three because I know the organization and the fan base thinks that way. Marcus Smart's the eldest son. He's been here the longest. Well, yeah, you put Marcus Smart is the big one, and the other two guys just go along for the ride. But Marcus Smart is the eldest son, who thinks a little more highly of himself than he really is. He's got the personality. Jason Tatum's the youngest, right? He's the most talented. He's the cute one who's spoiled. I can attest to that because I'm the youngest of five. At 59 years old, I am still spoiled. You're the oldest in your family, so you understand that dynamic, right? Well,
maybe that's why I'm drawn to Marcus.
Marcus Smart, right? I should be drawn to Jason Tatum, but Jaylen Brown's like the middle child. Marsha. Jan from the Brady Bunch.
He's the second longest tenured Celtic. Marcus Smart is the longest tenured Celtic, and Jason Tatum is the third longest tenured Celtic.
Right.
So
of those three, so yeah, they look again. That's what it is, and I think Jaylen Brown, like the middle child, not a lot of fanfare with him. He's the one guy on the team that doesn't argue with officials. He just kind of goes about his business. He saved your bacon in game one, and all everyone talked about was Horford and Derek White hitting threes and Jason Tatum getting 13 assists. Without Jaylen Brown scoring the first 8 points of the fourth quarter in game one, you don't win that game. And without him scoring the 17 points in the first quarter last night, you probably don't win that game last night. I think he's the front runner for MVP, so I encourage people to read that column about Jaylen Brown on Full Press Coverage.
That's a great point. Absolutely. Check that column out. And Sap, I think also as well, you look at, and I don't know if you mentioned this in your column because I haven't had a chance to read it yet, but you look at, okay, Jason Tatum, all NBA first team this year, was an all-star. Marcus Smart wins defensive player of the year. Jaylen Brown isn't an all-star, no accolades. So that sort of fits into that narrative too, but he's been
great point.
He's been tremendous, Sap, in the finals so far. So I think that
I should have talked to you before I wrote the column because that's a great point.
Sap.
I should. I steal a lot of your ideas.
You do,
for some columns, so I got to start giving you more heads up on that.
I'm an idea machine, Sap.
You are,
So those, I think that as far as the next game goes, Sap, we've talked about what we think Golden State's going to do. Try to go maybe a little younger, a little bit more athletic. The Celtics, the game plan should be the same, right? Keep it close. Fatigue Golden State, make them work offensively. Don't turn the ball over. And I think also make a concerted effort to drive to the basket because he said no rim protecting on Golden State. So Marcus Smart, Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, those guys should all be putting their head down and trying to get to the basket. Take twos if they're available. No problem with that. Just, keep the game close and then make your move in the fourth quarter. I think that has shown to be a winning recipe. So Celtics 2 games away from capturing their 18th title, Sap. As far as what's going on in the rest of the league, well, a little bit of has to do with this series, Sap. LeBron James has to insert himself into every single conversation, whether it's the NBA offseason, his team was eliminated months ago, or if he's playing in the finals. And so he's talking about what team he'd rather play for amongst these two teams that are remaining, Sap. And he said the Warriors because LeBron wants things to be easier for him. And that would be a front runner position because, him playing with Curry and Klay Thompson is exactly the types of players that LeBron is best with. And Tatum sort of has and Brown would sort of fill the role that he does here. So I disagree with this choice because I think it's him taking the easy way out again, Sap.
Well, that's taking the smart way out, isn't it? I mean, why in life do you want the easier road? Take the road less traveled, you know, uh, be one to go in a better situation. I don't know if it would be the best situation because you'd be going to a team where the two great shooters you have are older. I mean, I do think LeBron would probably lead the league in assists if he's got a healthy Klay Thompson and Steph Curry on his wings, right? And I know he has a relationship with Draymond Green, and Draymond Green might be the only superstar. Well, I don't call him a superstar. The only elite player, star, whatever, who would actually get in LeBron's face. I don't know if LeBron's ever had any issues with teammates. Kyrie kind of like ignored him, but Kyrie's just a different breed. I think that Draymond Green would actually get in LeBron's face, like he did with Kevin Durant. I don't think that Draymond Green has an issue with that. If he was to go to Golden State, I mean, he would probably lead the league in assists with Curry and Klay Thompson. I mean, here I am pumping another column. After LeBron won his title in LA 2 years ago, I said, well, he should then go to Boston to lead them to their 18th title and show Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum how to win. So, maybe LeBron should have contacted me before he made his next move. But yeah, LeBron inserts himself here, kind of like Tom Brady inserts himself into everything at this point, right? Tom Brady announced his retirement on the eve of the NFC Championship game. And everyone was like, oh, I don't think he'll ever do that to take away from the sport. Baloney. He's got as big an ego as LeBron James, as they should. They're the two biggest athletes of this century in terms of team sports. And, LeBron likes to insert himself into this stuff from time to time, but that's good. That's okay. The ratings aren't as good without him, right? We know that.
I think they're better without him personally.
Right. Even though the numbers don't show that.
I'm paying closer attention. That's what it is. The numbers, you can cook the numbers, Sap. That's LeBron's got his fingers all over this sort of stuff. He's juicing the numbers.
He is. It's not Nielsen. It's LeBron James. He's now running all of that stuff. I think maybe at Sully's Tavern in Southie, the numbers are higher because the Celtics are playing. But overall, the more people watch when he plays. But he does like to insert himself. He's a master at doing that. He's going to play for the Lakers next year, and then who knows where he goes from there.
I'm not sure. We have to still see who decides to draft Bronny, and that's ultimately going to be where he plays. Maybe he'll be an expansion team by the time that LeBron, his son, is drafted, and LeBron has said that he has interest in purchasing the Las Vegas expansion team, if that does happen. Las Vegas and Seattle, the two most talked about locations for the NBA expanding to 32 teams. Adam Silver has yet to confirm that. In fact, he's denied it so far, but most people seem to think that's where things are going. And LeBron made it known that the team that he would want is the Vegas team. Is that a good fit, Sep?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, he's kind of settled down on the West Coast in Southern California. Southern California to Vegas is fairly close. And, an expansion team, you don't have to deal with any of all of the problems that the prior franchise had. We kind of thought about Portland, but now Phil Knight's involved with possibly purchasing Portland whenever they're for sale. I don't think Seattle would necessarily be of interest for LeBron. Vegas would be. It would be a good thing. And he's going to need some investors in that and whatever the fee is, it's pretty high. I know he's a billionaire now, but you're not going to take every last dollar
it'll
buy
be
a basketball team.
At least $2 billion is my guess.
Right.
Is what the fee will be.
Because you're talking Portland's over $2 billion. The Denver Broncos are selling for $4.5 billion in the NFL. This is what these franchises go for. So yeah, if LeBron wants to buy Vegas, maybe Fenway Sports Group gets involved. But I think he wants a bigger ownership stake than that because he owns 2% of Fenway Sports Group. I think LeBron wants to own more than 2% of a basketball team. I think he kind of wants to do that on his own.
Is he willing, though? The reason that I thought the Portland thing would work well, too, is because, like you said, it's an established franchise and you're not starting from necessarily the bottom. Like with these expansion teams in the NBA, it takes them a decade to get competitive. Yeah. Is he going to be okay with that, Sap?
That's a great question. I mean, again, it does take a while. I mean, look, some of these expansion teams have never got started. I mean, Minnesota's been in the league for 25, more than that, 30 years, and they've never sniffed the finals. They made it to one conference finals. Orlando had a decent run with Shaq and then got back to the finals with Dwight Howard. But yeah, it's not an easy road. Miami,
the Grizzlies
completely
had to
different. Move. Right. Yeah. They had to move, from another country.
Yeah,
so
Toronto, a long time to get good.
Yep. Miami's the best of the group. They've won 3 championships, but I mean, they just went out and sign LeBron James as a free agent. I mean, if LeBron can attract a free agent to Vegas, then that's maybe the way to go. And I think players would like to play in Vegas. Heck, if they've got a team in Vegas, I'm sure Paul Pierce would come out of retirement and play for LeBron, right?
Yeah, he might.
Yeah. He can
Charles
wear that
Barkley.
jacket he was wearing last night. Yeah, well, Barkley, Jordan. Jordan might say, hell, I'm going to sell my team and go play for LeBron. I don't think that would ever happen.
I do think, Seth, I think there should be a team in Vegas because I think it's shown that it's a very viable market between the Golden Knights and the Raiders there. Though the Raiders have had a lot of issues with their players not being responsible in Vegas. So I do think that that's a legitimate concern. Not so much the concern about are they going to bet on games and stuff like that, because I think that for the most part, players are smart enough to know, okay, I will get caught if I do this. But with the fact that it's a city that's open 24 hours a day, I think, especially for young men, is very hard to stay on the straight and narrow for it. And
the only thing with Jet, I'm going to push back a little bit with that, and I think it is a good point because we always talked about that with New Orleans. New Orleans was always tough to get players because New Orleans is a party town, right? I mean, obviously come to Boston, the bars close at 10 in the evening, and the restaurants stop selling food at 9 for whatever particular reason. But I think basketball players deal with things better than football players because basketball players, the season is longer. They're not getting hit in the head. There's not as much idle time. I mean, you play once a week in football. Monday night is a big night out for these guys because Tuesday's the day off generally. Basketball, you're traveling a lot. You're coming back home. I think it seems to me that basketball players would handle that type of stuff better than football players. I mean, basketball players can be divas. We get that. We know James Harden likes strip clubs, but we don't really hear. We don't hear many really crazy things about basketball players, right?
God, would he want to play in the Vegas team? James Harden.
Lord. He'd play for free.
Be the captain.
He would, yeah. You know what? There's an interesting column. If Vegas has a team, you got Harden, Barkley, Paul Pierce out of retirement. Maybe Jordan plays a little bit. Yeah.
Right. Who's the all Vegas team, right?
The all Vegas team. Yeah. Antoine Walker, without question. He and Paul Pierce would be on that roster. But I think basketball players. Oh, God. Yeah, absolutely. During the finals, why wouldn't he go play there now? Great idea, Jed. I should reach out to you more often before these columns come up.
That's for you. My gift to you.
Thank you so much, Jed. But I think the football players, because of the idle time, they just, there's a lot of idle time there in Vegas and you can get in trouble. And I think the basketball players, they seem to be better guys. I mean, I'm making a general statement here, but, how many?
Well, I think, Seth, maybe it's because.
Was there any?
Can you have more?
Have we ever heard of an Aaron? Well, we're yelling over each other. Have we ever heard of an Aaron Hernandez? We're about ready to start throwing punch. You're getting like Draymond Green. No, but have we ever heard of an Aaron Hernandez situation in basketball? I can't quickly think of one. I mean, Gilbert Arenas was a little bit off the wall, but I mean, he,
not really.
I said, more divas than real problems.
Jason Williams thing.
Yeah, that seemed more of an accident type of thing.
Right, it did. Trying to think what else. What was the name of the guy on the Lakers in the 1980 season, Sepp, who was the cocaine issue and had the gun?
Oh, Jesus, I don't know about that.
Why am I forgetting?
In the 80s?
In the 1979, the season, he didn't play in the finals because they booted him from the team.
I don't remember that.
Wow. I'm going to tell you right.
That's an interesting story. I will. I'll be Draymond Green picking up multiple defenders. Yeah, I think with basketball, you basically see guys that, again, divas, but not bad guys, good guys, actually, like family guys.
Spencer Haywood.
Kids that played. Spencer Haywood was a loose cannon. Yes, he was. But, nothing quite to the stretch of Aaron Hernandez. Or
you're right.
Yeah. So they're just, again, they can be, like Draymond Green seems like a really good guy. I mean, he's loud and crazy and obnoxious, but he seems like a good dad, husband, son, all that stuff. So I think they could handle that. I don't know how we got into this conversation, but I think eventually you're going to get a team in Vegas, and I think the players, some of the free agents, would flock there for sure.
Yeah, that's Sap, to finish up a team that has not the nightlife of Las Vegas, the Utah Jazz, who have basically the opposite of the nightlife of Las Vegas. I'm pretty sure things close at around 7:00 in Salt Lake City. They are looking for a new head coach after Quinn Snyder stepped down. By the way, they had a press conference with Quinn Snyder where he resigned, which is very odd, but that's how they chose to do things there. And now they're looking at head coaches. A rumored name is Brad Stevens, the current general manager of the Celtics. I don't see any way that he would take that job because it would be a demotion, and the Celtics are 2 games away from winning the finals with a team that he's in charge of. Unless he's just really misses coaching, I don't think that that's realistic. Sap, what do you think?
No, I don't. I mean, does he want to go back and work for Danny Ainge? I mean, I don't know what their relationship was and is, but he's kind of really built himself a nice reputation here. Like you said, 2 games away from winning a championship, and he put the finishing touches on this team, bringing back Al Horford and then trading for Derek White. Really nice moves that push the team forward to the spot they're in right now. He's making great money. It's kind of a cushy job. You don't have to travel as much. You can be home in the office more often than not. And then maybe in a year or 2, he wants to segue back into coaching. At that point, he could probably go do that. And especially if they win a championship now, his value goes higher to the point where someone may offer him, okay, you're going to be president of basketball operations / head coach,
right,
and have all that power, which they don't do that much in the NBA anymore, but they still will do it. And he'll really have complete control where he just reports to the owner, which he does now, but he's not coaching the team. So I couldn't see that happening unless he's just as a niche to get back into coaching. But I think he continues in this job, makes $6-7 million a year. And if they win a championship, he can fine tune this roster. They could have a nice run because they only have one player on this roster right now that's over 28 years old, and that's Al Horford. It's a young team.
Absolutely. And you'd imagine if they're able to win a championship, that veteran free agents would want to come to the team. That's how it works in the NBA, right? So they have a chance to maximize the roster with guys who are looking to win a ring. But yeah, I'm sure Brad Stevens, there's a part of him that does miss coaching because he's still a young guy. But this is a great job. It's a lot less stressful because you're not traveling every single day, every week. And so, and you get the credit for if you build the roster. So there's a lot less blame. And at least initially, over time, you get more blame. But I don't see him leaving. And for the Jazz, I don't know who's going to end up coaching that team because they're going to inherit a team that's going to, I imagine, look very different.
Yeah, when your 2 best players don't like each other, one's going to have to go. So you're going to have a little talent drain. In Utah, not an easy place or a place at all to recruit free agents. It's going to be interesting to see what happens. But Ainge can recognize talent. We know that. I don't know about how he is at roster construction. I think that was a weakness with Danny Ainge. He wouldn't make those moves at the trade deadline to put the Celtics over the top, and give Brad Stevens credit for making those moves at this trade deadline and bringing in Al Horford last offseason. So it's a good job, not a great job, but I don't see Brad Stevens going there. And I don't see Brad Stevens going back to college either. I think once you taste the NBA, you don't want to go back to college, especially with eventually, the NIL and just, one and dones. And that's going to be a thankless job.
A job that we thought was the jobs that we thought were appealing to him, Duke, Indiana, right, North Carolina, those are all been filled very recently. So, those are not jobs that are going to be coming up for him. And so I think he's very happy where he is. And frankly, he should be. Yeah. But that's going to do it for us here, Sap, at the Pick and Roll NBA podcast with Jet and Sap. Thanks to Full Press Coverage. Make sure you check out their website for Sap's article and whatever articles I inspire him to write in the future. So go check that out. He's got a great article on Jaylen Brown right now. And check out his social media, mine as well, at JohnSap25, at Jet Stryer. And you can find the show wherever podcasts are found. Just type in the Pick and Roll NBA podcast with Jet and Sap. We'll be back after game 4, which is Friday night, talking about what happens in that game. And hopefully the Celtics can take a commanding 3-1 series lead. We shall see. But until then, thanks for listening, everybody. See ya.